The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Peterson as recruits stumbled out of their barracks for another grueling day of basic training. Among them walked Sarah Mitchell, a 22-year-old woman whose slight frame and quiet demeanor had already made her a target for ridicule. She moved with purpose despite her exhaustion, her military-issued boots clicking against the concrete in perfect rhythm. Drill Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez stood at the center of the training ground, his imposing figure casting an intimidating shadow over the assembled recruits. His voice boomed across the field like thunder, demanding absolute attention from every soldier in training. Rodriguez had been molding recruits for over 15 years, and he prided himself on breaking down the weak and building up the strong. In his mind, the military had no place for those who couldn't handle pressure. "Listen up, maggots," Rodriguez shouted, his voice carrying the authority of countless battles and years of experience. "Today we're going to separate the soldiers from the pretenders. Some of you think you belong here, but I'm going to show you exactly where you stand in this man's army." Sarah stood in formation with the other recruits, her back straight and her eyes focused ahead. She had joined the military against her family's wishes, driven by a deep desire to serve her country and prove that she belonged among the ranks of America's finest. Her father had been a career soldier, and his stories of honor, duty, and sacrifice had inspired her from a young age. Despite his concerns about the challenges she would face as a woman in the military, Sarah was determined to follow in his footsteps. The drill sergeant began calling out names and assigning training exercises, his sharp eyes scanning each recruit with the precision of a hawk hunting its prey. When his gaze fell on Sarah, his expression shifted to one of barely concealed disdain. He had already decided that she didn't belong here, and he wasn't shy about making his opinions known. "Mitchell," Rodriguez barked, his voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. "Step forward." Sarah moved with crisp precision, taking 3 steps forward and snapping to attention. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral and professional. She had expected this moment would come eventually, and she was prepared to face whatever challenge the drill sergeant threw her way. "Look at this specimen," Rodriguez said, walking in a slow circle around Sarah as the other recruits watched in uncomfortable silence. 5'4", maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. "Tell me, Mitchell, what makes you think you can hang with the real soldiers in this unit?" Sarah kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, her voice steady and clear when she responded. "I'm here to serve my country and become the best soldier I can be, drill sergeant." Rodriguez let out a harsh laugh that echoed across the training ground. "The best soldier you can be? That's rich. You know what I see when I look at you, Mitchell? I see someone who's going to get good soldiers killed because she's too weak to pull her own weight." The words stung, but Sarah refused to let them show on her face. She had heard similar comments throughout her life, people who doubted her abilities because of her size and gender. Each time, she had proven them wrong through hard work, determination, and an unshakable belief in herself. "From now on, Mitchell, your call sign is Ghost," Rodriguez announced with a cruel smile. "Because that's what you are, barely visible, hardly there, and destined to disappear when things get tough. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll fade away quietly before you become a liability to the real soldiers around you." The other recruits shifted uncomfortably, some exchanging glances while others stared at the ground. They knew better than to speak up against the drill sergeant, but many felt uncomfortable with the public humiliation they were witnessing. Sarah had been nothing but professional and respectful to everyone in the unit, and she had already shown herself to be a dedicated and hard-working recruit. "Do you understand your new call sign, Ghost?" Rodriguez demanded, his voice dripping with contempt. "Yes, drill sergeant," Sarah replied without hesitation, her voice remaining steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. As the days passed, the Ghost nickname stuck, but not in the way Rodriguez had intended. While he used it as a weapon to belittle and demoralize Sarah, she began to embrace it as a symbol of her ability to move quietly and efficiently through any situation. She excelled in stealth training exercises, often completing missions without being detected by her instructors or fellow recruits. During hand-to-hand combat training, Sarah's smaller size became an advantage rather than a liability. She learned to use her opponent's strength against them, employing techniques that relied on speed, agility, and precision rather than brute force. Her instructor, Sergeant Williams, was impressed by her natural ability and dedication to improvement. "Mitchell has something special," Williams mentioned to Rodriguez after a particularly challenging training session. "She's got instincts you can't teach and a work ethic that puts most of the other recruits to shame." Rodriguez dismissed the comment with a wave of his hand. "She's small, weak, and doesn't belong here. Mark my words, Williams, she'll wash out before the month is over." But Sarah continued to prove her doubters wrong. During physical fitness tests, she consistently scored in the top percentile despite her smaller stature. Her running times were exceptional, and she could complete obstacle courses faster than recruits twice her size. Her marksmanship scores were among the highest in the company, and her tactical knowledge impressed even the most experienced instructors. The other recruits began to take notice of Sarah's abilities and started treating her with the respect she deserved. They saw how she helped struggling soldiers improve their performance and how she never complained about the extra challenges Rodriguez threw her way. Slowly but surely, she was earning her place among them through merit rather than acceptance. One evening, as the recruits gathered in the mess hall for dinner, Private Johnson approached Sarah's table with his meal tray in hand. Johnson was one of the larger recruits, a former college football player who had initially shared Rodriguez's skepticism about Sarah's capabilities. "Mind if I sit here, Ghost?" Johnson asked, using the nickname with respect rather than mockery. Sarah looked up from her meal and nodded. "Of course, Johnson. How did your training go today?" "Better than expected, thanks to your advice about the rope climbing technique," Johnson replied as he sat down. "I finally made it to the top without looking like I was about to pass out." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of several other recruits who had also come to appreciate Sarah's knowledge and skills. They discussed training strategies, shared stories about their backgrounds, and gradually built the kind of camaraderie that made effective military units possible. Rodriguez watched these interactions from across the mess hall, his expression growing more sour by the day. He had expected Sarah to crack under pressure and either quit or be dismissed from the program. Instead, she was thriving and earning the respect of her peers through her actions rather than her words. The drill sergeant decided to escalate his efforts to break Sarah's spirit. He began assigning her additional duties, making her responsible for cleaning the barracks while other recruits rested. He subjected her to extra physical training sessions and criticized her performance even when she executed tasks flawlessly. During one particularly intense training exercise, Rodriguez ordered Sarah to carry a heavy pack through a challenging obstacle course while the other recruits watched. The pack was loaded with equipment that weighed nearly as much as Sarah herself, and the course was designed to test the limits of even the strongest soldiers. "Let's see how our little ghost handles some real weight," Rodriguez announced with obvious satisfaction. "This should be interesting." Sarah approached the challenge with the same quiet determination she brought to every task. She adjusted the pack straps for optimal weight distribution and studied the obstacle course layout with tactical precision. When the signal came to begin, she moved through the course with fluid grace, using momentum and technique to overcome obstacles that might have stopped larger soldiers using brute force alone. The other recruits watched in amazement as Sarah navigated the course, completing each obstacle with efficiency and skill. She finished the course in a respectable time despite the excessive weight she was carrying, and she wasn't even breathing heavily when she crossed the finish line. Rodriguez's face flushed with anger and frustration. He had expected Sarah to fail spectacularly, giving him the justification he needed to recommend her dismissal from the program. Instead, she had once again demonstrated her competence and resilience in the face of unfair treatment. "Lucky run," Rodriguez muttered, refusing to acknowledge Sarah's impressive performance. "Let's see how you handle the night navigation exercise next week." As the weeks passed, Sarah continued to excel in every aspect of her training while enduring Rodriguez's constant harassment. She learned to anticipate his attempts to undermine her and developed strategies to overcome whatever obstacles he placed in her path. Her fellow recruits grew to admire her quiet strength and unshakable determination. The night navigation exercise Rodriguez had mentioned turned out to be another attempt to break Sarah's spirit. He assigned her a route that was significantly longer and more challenging than those given to other recruits, and he made sure she would be completing it alone rather than with a partner. Ghost will be taking the northern route, Rodriguez announced during the briefing. It's a solo mission, 12 miles through rough terrain with multiple checkpoint objectives. Should be right in her wheelhouse, since she likes to work alone. Sarah accepted the assignment without complaint, recognizing it as another test of her resolve. She spent extra time studying maps of the area and preparing her equipment for the challenging night ahead. When darkness fell, she set out on her mission with confidence and determination. The northern route took her through dense forest, across rocky streams, and over steep hillsides that would have challenged even experienced soldiers. Sarah moved through the darkness like a shadow, using her training and natural instincts to navigate obstacles and locate the required checkpoints. The following weeks brought an intensification of Sarah's training as the recruit program moved into its advanced phases. Rodriguez seemed determined to find new ways to challenge and humiliate her, but each attempt only served to highlight her growing competence and resilience. The other recruits had begun to look up to Sarah as an unofficial leader, often seeking her advice on difficult training scenarios. During a particularly challenging urban warfare simulation, Sarah's tactical thinking impressed Captain Anderson, the company commander who rarely involved himself in day-to-day training activities. The exercise required teams to navigate through a mock city environment, complete objectives, and extract safely while avoiding simulated enemy forces. Sarah's team found themselves pinned down by superior numbers in a scenario that seemed impossible to overcome. While other team leaders might have relied on aggressive tactics or overwhelming firepower, Sarah analyzed the situation with calm precision. She identified weaknesses in the enemy's positioning and developed a strategy that used stealth and misdirection to achieve their objectives. Ghost, take Martinez and circle around to the east, she whispered into her radio, coordinating her team's movements with military efficiency. Johnson, you and Williams create a distraction on the west side. Thompson, you're with me for the main approach. Her plan worked flawlessly. While the simulated enemy forces focused on the distraction, Sarah led her small team through an unguarded route to their primary objective. They completed their mission and extracted successfully without losing a single team member. Captain Anderson watched the exercise from the command center, studying Sarah's tactical decisions with growing interest. Her approach demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking and leadership potential that the military desperately needed in its next generation of officers. Impressive work from Mitchell's team, Anderson commented to Rodriguez, who was standing nearby with a sour expression on his face. Her tactical approach was creative and effective. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. She got lucky, sir. In a real combat situation, that kind of risky strategy would get people killed. I disagree, Anderson replied firmly. She assessed the situation, identified opportunities, and executed a plan that achieved the mission objectives with minimal risk to her team. That's exactly the kind of thinking we want to encourage. The captain made a mental note to keep an eye on Sarah's progress. He had seen many promising recruits over the years, but few had demonstrated the combination of tactical intelligence, leadership ability, and moral character that Sarah displayed on a daily basis. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to observe the mysterious activity around the restricted facility she had noticed during her night navigation exercise. She had identified a pattern to the movements, with personnel entering and leaving the area at specific times during the night shift. The security around the facility was significantly tighter than anything else on the base, suggesting that whatever was happening there was of considerable importance. Her curiosity grew stronger each day, but she knew that any attempt to investigate would have to be carefully planned and executed. Getting caught in a restricted area would not only end her military career, but could also result in serious criminal charges. She needed more information before she could make any decisions about how to proceed. During a late-night study session in the barracks, Sarah struck up a conversation with Private Chun, who worked part-time in the base communications center. Chun was a quiet, intelligent recruit who had quickly earned a reputation for his technical skills and attention to detail. "Chun, you work in the comm center, right?" Sarah asked casually, not wanting to appear too interested in any particular subject. "Yeah, night shift mostly," Chun replied, looking up from his manual. "It's pretty quiet most of the time, just routine communications and monitoring." Sarah nodded, considering her next question carefully. "I was wondering about the different facilities on base. During our navigation exercises, I've noticed some areas that seem to have restricted access. Just curious about base security procedures." Chen's expression grew more cautious. "There are definitely areas that are off-limits to regular personnel. Some of them are just storage facilities or equipment maintenance areas. Others," he paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "Others have classification levels that require special clearance." "Special clearance?" Sarah pressed gently. "Like what kind of activities would require that level of security?" "I can't really talk about specifics," Chen said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening to their conversation. "But I will say that there's been an increase in secure communications traffic lately. Messages coming in and out at all hours, usually encrypted at levels way above normal base operations." Sarah filed this information away, adding another piece to the puzzle she was trying to solve. The pattern of increased secure communications combined with the late-night activities she had observed suggested that something significant was happening at the restricted facility. The next morning brought news that would change the dynamics of the entire training program. Captain Anderson announced that the company would be participating in a special evaluation exercise designed to identify recruits with exceptional potential for advanced military roles. "This exercise will test your abilities under extreme pressure," Anderson explained to the assembled recruits. "You'll be evaluated on tactical thinking, leadership capabilities, physical performance, and adaptability to unexpected situations. The top performers will be considered for accelerated advancement and specialized training programs." Rodriguez stood behind the captain, his expression revealing his displeasure with this development. He had been working to undermine Sarah's progress, and the prospect of her being recognized for advancement clearly frustrated his plans. The evaluation exercise was scheduled to take place over 3 days, with different challenges testing various aspects of military capability. Sarah approached the announcement with mixed emotions, excitement about the opportunity to prove herself, but also concern about how Rodriguez might try to sabotage her performance. That evening, as the recruits prepared for the evaluation exercise, Sarah made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. She had gathered enough information about the restricted facility to believe that something important was happening there, and she felt a responsibility to investigate further. Her military training had taught her the importance of intelligence gathering, and her instincts told her that what she had observed might be significant. She spent hours planning her approach, studying base maps and timing charts to identify the optimal window for investigation. The restricted facility appeared to have reduced security during a brief period between shift changes, and she calculated that she could reach the area undetected if she moved during that specific time frame. The night before the evaluation exercise began, Sarah put her plan into action. She waited until the barracks were quiet and her fellow recruits were asleep before slipping out into the darkness. Her movements were silent and precise, utilizing every stealth technique she had learned during her training. The route to the restricted facility took her through areas of the base she had never accessed before. She moved carefully through shadows and behind buildings, avoiding security patrols and surveillance cameras with the skill of someone who had been born for this type of work. As she approached the facility, Sarah could see that it was larger and more complex than she had initially realized. The building was a modern structure with multiple levels and sophisticated security systems. Through the windows, she could see evidence of high-tech equipment and what appeared to be a significant number of personnel working inside. Finding an unguarded access point proved more challenging than she had anticipated. The facility was surrounded by multiple layers of security, including motion sensors, cameras, and patrol routes that overlapped to eliminate blind spots. Sarah studied the security system for nearly an hour, looking for any weakness that might allow her to gain entry. Finally, she identified a maintenance access panel on the building's exterior that appeared to be connected to the facility's ventilation system. The panel was located in an area with limited camera coverage, and the motion sensors didn't extend quite far enough to detect movement in that specific location. Sarah approached the panel with extreme caution, using tools from her training kit to carefully remove the access cover. The opening was just large enough for her to squeeze through, and it led to a ductwork system that provided access to the interior of the building. Moving through the ventilation system required her to crawl through tight spaces in complete silence, but Sarah's small size and physical conditioning made it possible. She navigated the ductwork using her tactical training and innate sense of direction, following the main airflow toward what she hoped would be the central areas of the facility. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Sarah found a ventilation grate that provided a view into one of the facility's main rooms. What she saw through the grate made her heart race with a mixture of excitement and concern. The room was filled with advanced computer equipment and communication systems unlike anything she had ever seen. Multiple personnel were working at sophisticated workstations, monitoring screens that displayed information in formats she couldn't immediately understand. The level of technology and the intensity of the activity suggested that this facility was involved in operations far beyond normal base activities. Sarah listened carefully to the conversations taking place below, trying to gather as much information as possible. The personnel were discussing mission parameters, target coordinates, and operational timelines using terminology that indicated they were involved in active military operations rather than training exercises. One conversation in particular caught her attention. Two officers were discussing a situation that seemed to require immediate action, and they mentioned the need for personnel with specific skill sets to handle a developing crisis. The urgency in their voices and the nature of their discussion suggested that lives might be at stake. The intel confirms that the hostage situation is deteriorating rapidly, one officer said. We need someone who can get in undetected and assess the situation without escalating the crisis. What about our usual assets? The other officer replied. Surely we have operatives who can handle this type of mission. They're all deployed or unavailable, came the response. We need someone unexpected, someone who won't fit the profile of a typical military operative. Someone small, fast, and invisible. Sarah's pulse quickened as she realized the implications of what she was hearing. These officers were discussing a real-world crisis that required exactly the type of skills she had been developing during her training. The irony wasn't lost on her that Rodriguez's mocking ghost nickname might actually describe the kind of operative they needed. Captain Anderson looked up from his desk as Sarah knocked on his office door, her expression serious and determined. He had been reviewing evaluation reports from the previous night's exercises, and Sarah's name had appeared at the top of several instructor recommendations. Her timing was impeccable, though she couldn't have known that. Come in, Mitchell, Anderson said, setting aside his paperwork. I understand you wanted to speak with me privately. This is unusual during evaluation week, so I assume it's important. Sarah entered the office and stood at attention, her military bearing perfect despite the nervous energy coursing through her body. She had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times during the sleepless hours before dawn, but she knew that no amount of preparation could guarantee the outcome she hoped for. Sir, I need to report something that may be of critical importance to ongoing operations, Sarah began, her voice steady and professional. I have reason to believe that there's a crisis situation that requires immediate attention, and I believe I may have relevant information. Anderson's expression shifted from casual interest to focused attention. In his years of military service, he had learned to recognize the difference between routine concerns and genuinely urgent matters. Sarah's demeanor suggested that this conversation fell into the latter category. Go on, Anderson said, leaning back in his chair and giving Sarah his full attention. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would either validate her actions or end her military career. Sir, during a training exercise last night, I observed unusual activity at a classified facility on base. I believe there's an active hostage situation being coordinated from that location, and time appears to be running out for a peaceful resolution. The captain's eyes narrowed slightly. Mitchell, how exactly did you come by this information? And please be very specific about your actions and observations. Sarah had anticipated this question and had decided that complete honesty was her only viable option. She explained her night navigation exercise, her observation of lights at the restricted facility, and her growing curiosity about the activities taking place there. She described her investigation and eventual infiltration of the facility, providing details that demonstrated both her capabilities and her commitment to gathering accurate intelligence. Anderson listened without interruption, his expression revealing nothing about his thoughts or reactions. When Sarah finished her account, he sat in silence for several long moments, weighing the implications of what he had just heard. Mitchell, what you've just described constitutes multiple serious violations of military protocol and base security, Anderson said finally. Under normal circumstances, I would be obligated to place you under arrest and initiate court-martial proceedings immediately. Sarah felt her heart sink, but she maintained her composure. She had known the risks when she made her decision to investigate, and she was prepared to face the consequences of her actions. However, Anderson continued, the information you've provided appears to be accurate, and your assessment of the situation's urgency is correct. There is indeed an active hostage crisis being coordinated from the facility you infiltrated, and conventional options have proven ineffective. The captain stood up from his desk and walked to a secure phone mounted on his office wall. He dialed a number and spoke in low tones for several minutes, occasionally glancing back at Sarah as he provided information to whoever was on the other end of the line. When he finished the call, Anderson returned to his desk and studied Sarah with renewed interest. Mitchell, I've just spoken with Colonel Harrison, who is overseeing the crisis response. Based on your report and your demonstrated capabilities, he wants to meet with you immediately. Sarah felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. She had hoped that her information would be taken seriously, but she hadn't expected to be brought directly into the operational planning process. Sir, I should mention that Drill Sergeant Rodriguez has been less than supportive of my presence in this program, Sarah said carefully. He may not view my involvement in this situation favorably. Anderson's expression hardened slightly. Rodriguez's opinions about your capabilities are irrelevant to this situation. What matters now is your potential contribution to saving lives. Are you prepared to take on a mission that goes far beyond anything you've encountered in training? Yes, sir, Sarah replied without hesitation. I'm ready to serve in whatever capacity is needed. The captain made another phone call, this time to arrange for Sarah's immediate transport to the Crisis Command Center. As they prepared to leave his office, Anderson offered a piece of advice that would prove crucial in the hours ahead. Mitchell, what you're about to experience will test every skill you've developed and push you beyond your current limits, he said. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and remember that sometimes the most unconventional approaches yield the best results. 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself in a high-security facility that she had never known existed. The command center was a hub of intense activity, with military personnel and intelligence analysts working at multiple workstations while large screens displayed real-time information about the hostage crisis. Colonel Harrison was an imposing figure whose presence commanded immediate respect from everyone in the room. He approached Sarah with a direct, no-nonsense manner that she appreciated after her experiences with Rodriguez's psychological games. Private Mitchell, Harrison said, extending his hand in greeting. Captain Anderson has briefed me on your unique situation and your potential value to this mission. I need to know if you're truly prepared for what we're asking you to do. I'm ready, sir, Sarah replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Harrison led her to a briefing area where intelligence analysts had assembled detailed information about the hostage crisis. The situation was even more complex and dangerous than Sarah had initially realized from her eavesdropping at the restricted facility. The perpetrators are holding 12 civilians in a heavily fortified warehouse facility, Harrison explained, pointing to architectural plans displayed on a large screen. They're well-armed, well-trained, and have demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of military tactics. Previous attempts to negotiate have failed, and they've made it clear that any direct assault will result in immediate execution of the hostages. Sarah studied the building plans and tactical assessments, her mind already beginning to formulate potential approaches. The warehouse was located in an industrial area with limited access routes, and the perpetrators had established defensive positions that would make a conventional assault extremely costly. What makes this situation particularly challenging is the perpetrators' apparent knowledge of our standard operating procedures, Harrison continued. They've anticipated and countered every conventional approach we might use. We need someone who can get inside undetected and provide real-time intelligence about the hostage locations and the perpetrators' capabilities. Sir, what's the timeline for this mission? Sarah asked, recognizing the urgency in the colonel's voice. We have approximately 4 hours before higher command authorizes a full assault, Harrison replied. After that point, the probability of civilian casualties increases dramatically. We need someone who can infiltrate the facility, assess the situation, and either facilitate a rescue operation or provide intelligence that enables a more targeted approach. Sarah absorbed this information while continuing to study the tactical displays. The building's layout showed multiple potential entry points, but most were heavily monitored or blocked by the perpetrators' defensive positions. However, she noticed something that the other analysts appeared to have overlooked. Colonel, has anyone considered the building's utility systems? Sarah asked, pointing to a section of the architectural plans. The warehouse appears to have an extensive maintenance tunnel system that connects to the city's infrastructure network. Harrison looked where she was pointing, then turned to one of his intelligence analysts. Do we have detailed information about those tunnels? I'll pull up the city engineering records, the analyst replied, quickly typing commands into his workstation. Within minutes, detailed schematics of the underground utility network appeared on the main display screen. Sarah studied the tunnel system with growing excitement. The maintenance tunnels provided access to the warehouse from multiple directions, and several entry points appeared to be located outside the perpetrator's surveillance perimeter. Her small size would be a significant advantage in navigating the confined spaces. This could work, Sarah said, tracing potential routes through the tunnel system. I could access the building from below, assess the hostage locations, and establish communication with the rescue team. The perpetrators wouldn't expect an approach from that direction. Colonel Harrison examined Sarah's proposed route, consulting with his tactical advisors and intelligence specialists. After several minutes of intense discussion, he turned back to Sarah with a decision that would change her life forever. Private Mitchell, I'm authorizing you for immediate deployment on this mission, Harrison announced. You'll be working with a specialized rescue team, but your primary role will be reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Are you prepared for this responsibility? Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline and determination. Everything she had trained for, everything she had endured during Rodriguez's harassment, had led to this moment. She was being given the opportunity to use her skills in service of a mission that could save innocent lives. Yes, sir, she replied with absolute conviction. I'm ready. The next hour was a whirlwind of preparation and briefing. Sarah was equipped with specialized communication gear, surveillance equipment, and tactical tools designed for stealth operations. She met with the rescue team that would be supporting her mission, experienced operators who treated her with the respect and professionalism she had earned through her actions. Team leader Sergeant Blake was a veteran of multiple special operations missions, and he quickly recognized Sarah's potential value to the operation. Mitchell, your job is to get inside undetected and provide us with real-time intelligence about the hostage locations and the perpetrators' defensive positions, he explained. We'll be standing by to execute a rescue operation based on your reports. As the team prepared to deploy, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez appeared at the command center, his expression a mixture of confusion and anger. He had apparently learned about Sarah's involvement in the mission and had come to voice his objections. Colonel Harrison, sir, Rodriguez said, approaching the command group with obvious agitation. I need to speak with you about Private Mitchell's assignment to this mission. She's not qualified for this type of operation, and her inclusion could compromise the entire mission. Harrison's expression grew cold as he turned to face Rodriguez. Sergeant, your concerns are noted but irrelevant. Private Mitchell has demonstrated exactly the capabilities we need for this mission, and she has my full confidence. But, sir, she's just a recruit, Rodriguez protested. She doesn't have the experience or the training for real-world operations. This is a mistake that could cost lives. Sarah felt the familiar sting of Rodriguez's doubts, but this time she was armed with something she had never possessed before: the complete confidence and support of her superiors. Colonel Harrison's next words would validate everything she had worked for during her time in the military. Sergeant Rodriguez, Private Mitchell has already contributed more valuable intelligence to this mission than any other single source, Harrison stated firmly. Her tactical thinking, technical skills, and demonstrated courage make her exactly the right person for this operation. Your assessment of her capabilities appears to have been seriously flawed. The command post established near the warehouse was a masterpiece of organized chaos, with multiple agencies coordinating their efforts while maintaining the delicate balance needed to prevent escalation of the crisis. Sarah arrived at the staging area as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the industrial landscape that would provide additional cover for her mission. Sergeant Blake gathered his team for a final briefing, with Sarah positioned at the center of the tactical display. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its windows darkened, and its perimeter heavily defended by the hostage-takers who had demonstrated their willingness to use violence to maintain control. Intelligence indicates that the perpetrators are using thermal imaging and motion detection equipment to monitor the approaches to the building, Blake explained, pointing to surveillance positions marked on the tactical map. This is why conventional infiltration methods have proven ineffective. They're detecting our people before they can get close enough to be useful. Sarah studied the layout of the surrounding area, noting the positions of law enforcement personnel and the lines of sight that the hostage-takers were likely monitoring. The utility tunnel approach she had identified offered the best hope of avoiding detection, but it would require her to navigate through confined spaces in complete darkness. The tunnel system connects to the warehouse's basement level, Sarah said, tracing the route she planned to take. According to the building plans, I should be able to access the main floor through a maintenance shaft located in the northwest corner of the building. Blake nodded approvingly. That puts you in position to observe the main area where we believe most of the hostages are being held. Your mission is to confirm hostage locations, count the number of perpetrators, and identify their weapons and defensive positions. Do not attempt any rescue actions on your own. Your job is intelligence gathering only. The team equipped Sarah with a microcommunication system that would allow her to maintain contact with the command post while remaining undetected. The device was so small and sophisticated that it seemed like something from a science fiction movie, but she quickly mastered its operation during a brief training session. Remember, Mitchell, Blake emphasized, you're going into an extremely dangerous situation with limited backup options. If you're detected or compromised, we may not be able to extract you immediately. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with this mission? Sarah looked around at the faces of the experienced operators who were putting their trust in her abilities. She thought about the 12 innocent people being held inside the warehouse, and she knew that she was their best hope for a successful rescue. The months of training, the harassment from Rodriguez, and her discovery of the crisis had all led to this moment. I'm ready, Sergeant, she replied with quiet confidence. Let's bring those people home. The entry into the tunnel system required Sarah to descend through a maintenance access point located 3 blocks from the warehouse. The tunnels were dark, cramped, and filled with the sounds of machinery and flowing water that would help mask any noise she might make during her infiltration. Sarah moved through the underground passages with the stealth and precision she had perfected during her training. Her small size allowed her to navigate spaces that would have been impossible for larger operatives, and her enhanced night vision equipment helped her avoid obstacles and navigate the complex tunnel layout. Ghost to command. I'm approximately halfway to the target location, Sarah whispered into her communication device. Tunnel conditions are as expected, and I'm maintaining pace according to the mission timeline. Copy that, Ghost. Blake's voice crackled back through her earpiece. Proceed with caution and report any changes in the situation. The nickname Ghost had taken on an entirely new meaning for Sarah during this mission. What Rodriguez had intended as an insult had become a perfect description of her operational capabilities. She was invisible, silent, and deadly effective when the situation demanded it. As she approached the warehouse, Sarah could hear sounds from above that indicated significant activity in the building. Voices, footsteps, and mechanical noises filtered down through the structural supports, providing her with valuable intelligence about the layout and occupancy of the facility. The access point to the warehouse's basement was exactly where the building plans had indicated it would be. Sarah carefully removed the access panel and emerged into a storage area filled with equipment and supplies that the hostage-takers had apparently been using to support their operation. "Ghost to command, I'm inside the target building," Sarah reported quietly. "I'm in a storage area on the basement level, and I can hear multiple voices on the floor above me." Beginning reconnaissance of the main level now. Sarah located the maintenance shaft she needed to reach the main floor, but accessing it required her to move through an area that might be monitored by the perpetrator's security systems. She spent several minutes studying the space, identifying potential surveillance equipment, and planning a route that would minimize her chances of detection. The shaft was narrow and vertical, requiring her to climb approximately 15 feet to reach the main level. Sarah ascended slowly and silently, using her tactical training to distribute her weight and avoid creating any vibrations that might alert the hostage-takers to her presence. At the top of the shaft, Sarah found herself behind a ventilation grate that provided a perfect observation point for the warehouse's main floor. What she saw through the grate made her heart race with a combination of fear and determination. The hostages were grouped together in the center of the warehouse floor, their hands bound, and their faces showing the strain of their ordeal. Sarah counted 12 civilians, matching the intelligence reports she had received during her briefing. They appeared to be unharmed, but obviously terrified. Surrounding the hostages were 6 armed perpetrators wearing tactical gear and carrying assault weapons. They had established defensive positions throughout the warehouse that provided overlapping fields of fire and clear lines of sight to all possible entry points. Their discipline and organization indicated that they were well-trained and experienced in military tactics. "Ghost to command," Sarah whispered into her communication device. "I have visual confirmation of 12 hostages in the center of the main floor. I count 6 perpetrators, all heavily armed with assault weapons. They've established professional defensive positions that would make a direct assault extremely costly." "Copy that, Ghost." Blake's voice came back immediately. "Can you identify any weaknesses in their positioning or any opportunities for a rescue operation?" Sarah studied the scene carefully, noting the positioning of both the hostages and their captors. The perpetrators had made one critical error in their defensive setup. They were so focused on potential external threats that they had limited surveillance of the areas directly above and below their positions. "Command, I believe I've identified an opportunity," Sarah reported. "The perpetrators are focused on horizontal approaches and have limited coverage of vertical angles. If I can create a distraction that draws their attention to one side of the building, your team might be able to breach from above using fast rope insertion through the skylights." Blake's response revealed his growing confidence in Sarah's tactical assessment. "Ghost, that's an interesting approach. Can you specify the timing and nature of the distraction you're proposing?" Sarah had been formulating a plan during her observation of the warehouse floor. The building's electrical system had a main control panel located near her current position, and she had noticed that the perpetrators were using battery-powered lighting to supplement the warehouse's overhead fixtures. "I can overload the main electrical panel and create a controlled blackout," Sarah explained. "When the lights go out, the perpetrators will likely move toward the windows to establish visual contact with your perimeter teams. That would give you approximately 30 seconds to breach from above before they realize what's happening." The plan was ambitious and risky, but it represented the best opportunity they had identified for a successful rescue operation. Blake consulted with his team and the command staff before providing authorization for Sarah to proceed. "Ghost, you are cleared to implement your plan," Blake confirmed. "Stand by for coordination with the breach team." Sarah carefully made her way to the electrical control panel, using her technical training to identify the specific circuits that controlled the warehouse's lighting system. She prepared the necessary overload that would create the blackout while avoiding any actions that might cause permanent damage or safety hazards. "Command, I'm in position at the electrical panel," Sarah reported. "Breach team should be prepared to execute on my signal." "Roger, Ghost." breach team is standing by on the roof. Execute your plan in 60 seconds. Sarah felt her heart racing as the final moments of the mission approached. Everything she had trained for, everything she had endured, and everything she had learned had led to this critical moment. The lives of 12 innocent people depended on the success of her plan. She initiated the electrical overload exactly as planned, plunging the warehouse into darkness and creating immediate confusion among the hostage-takers. As she had predicted, they moved toward the windows to assess the situation outside, leaving the skylight areas momentarily undefended. The breach team's insertion was flawless, with 4 operators fast roping through the skylights and establishing secure positions before the perpetrators could react to the new threat. In the chaos that followed, the hostage-takers found themselves caught between multiple angles of fire with no clear escape route. "This is police. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." Blake's voice boomed through the warehouse as his team moved to secure the hostages. 3 of the perpetrators immediately complied with the surrender order, recognizing that their situation had become hopeless. However, the remaining 3 attempted to use the hostages as human shields, creating a dangerous standoff that threatened to escalate into violence. Sarah realized that her mission was not yet complete. From her concealed position, she had a clear view of the remaining perpetrators and could see opportunities that the breach team might not have identified from their positions on the main floor. The debriefing session took place in a secure conference room at the base, with Colonel Harrison presiding over a gathering of military officials, intelligence specialists, and law enforcement commanders who had participated in the rescue operation. Sarah sat at the conference table, still wearing her tactical gear and feeling the weight of exhaustion after the intense mission. "Let's begin with an overview of the operation's success," Colonel Harrison announced to the assembled group. All 12 hostages were rescued without injury. All perpetrators were captured alive, and no law enforcement personnel sustained serious injuries. By any measure, this was an exceptional outcome for a high-risk rescue operation. The colonel's words were accompanied by nods of approval from around the table, but Sarah could sense that her violation of direct orders would be addressed before the session concluded. She had made a split-second decision that potentially saved lives, but she had also acted outside her assigned role and parameters. Sergeant Blake stood to present his team's assessment of the mission. "The key to our success was the intelligence provided by Private Mitchell during her infiltration of the facility. Her tactical assessment was accurate, her timing was perfect, and her ability to remain undetected until the final moments was extraordinary." Blake paused and looked directly at Sarah before continuing. "However, I must also note that Private Mitchell exceeded her assigned mission parameters when she engaged the final perpetrator directly. While her action may have prevented civilian casualties, it represented a violation of explicit orders to limit her role to intelligence gathering only." Colonel Harrison's expression revealed nothing about his thoughts as he absorbed Blake's report. "Private Mitchell, I want you to walk us through your decision-making process during that final sequence. Specifically, what led you to engage directly when you had been ordered to maintain your observation role?" Sarah had anticipated this question and had spent considerable time reflecting on her actions during the mission. She stood and addressed the assembled group with the same confidence and professionalism she had demonstrated throughout her military training. "Sir, I observed that one of the perpetrators was showing clear signs of panic and was positioning his weapon in a manner that suggested imminent violence against the hostages," Sarah explained. "Based on my tactical training and assessment of the situation, I determined that immediate action was necessary to prevent civilian casualties." "You understood that engaging directly was outside your mission parameters?" Harrison pressed. "Yes, sir," Sarah replied without hesitation. "I understood that I was violating orders, but I also understood that the primary mission objective was to ensure the safety of the hostages. When faced with a choice between following orders and potentially allowing civilian casualties, I chose to act in the best interests of the mission's overall success." The room fell silent as the officials considered Sarah's explanation. Her reasoning was sound from a tactical perspective, but military discipline required adherence to orders and chain of command. The tension between mission success and procedural compliance was a challenge that military leaders faced regularly. Captain Anderson, who had been observing the proceedings quietly, requested permission to speak. "Colonel, if I may offer some perspective on Private Mitchell's background and development during her training program." Harrison nodded for Anderson to proceed. "Private Mitchell has consistently demonstrated exceptional tactical thinking, leadership potential, and moral courage throughout her time in our program," Anderson stated. "Her decision to investigate the restricted facility that led to this mission was technically a violation of protocols, but it also demonstrated the kind of initiative and intelligence-gathering capability that we desperately need in our next generation of military leaders." Anderson's words carried weight with the assembled group, particularly given his reputation as a fair and experienced officer. His endorsement of Sarah's character and capabilities provided important context for evaluating her actions during the mission. Colonel Harrison stood and walked to a wall-mounted display showing the warehouse layout and mission timeline. "The success of this operation raises important questions about our traditional approaches to military training and operations," he said. "Private Mitchell's unconventional background and approach yielded results that our standard procedures and personnel were unable to achieve." The colonel turned back to face Sarah directly. "Mitchell, your actions during this mission were simultaneously insubordinate and heroic. You violated direct orders while potentially saving innocent lives. This presents us with a unique challenge in determining appropriate consequences and recognition." Sarah felt her heart racing as she awaited the colonel's decision. She had known that her actions would have consequences, but the uncertainty about whether those consequences would be positive or negative was nerve-wracking. "After consultation with my staff and review of all aspects of your performance," Harrison continued, "I've decided to recommend you for immediate advancement to the Special Operations Training Program, along with formal recognition for your contributions to this mission's success." The announcement sent a wave of surprise through the conference room. Advanced placement in special operations training was an honor typically reserved for the most exceptional soldiers after years of conventional military service. For a recruit to receive such recognition was virtually unprecedented. Furthermore, Harrison added, "Your call sign Ghost will be officially adopted as part of your military record. What began as an attempt to diminish your capabilities has instead become a symbol of your unique operational value." Sarah felt a surge of emotion that she struggled to contain. The validation of her abilities and potential represented the culmination of everything she had worked toward during her time in the military. More importantly, it demonstrated that her contributions had been recognized and valued at the highest levels of command. The meeting concluded with discussions of Sarah's future training schedule and assignments, but there was one more conversation that needed to take place before her transformation from ridiculed recruit to recognized operator could be complete. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez was waiting outside the conference room when Sarah emerged, his expression a complex mixture of emotions that she had never seen before. For months, he had been her primary antagonist, constantly undermining her confidence and questioning her place in the military. "Mitchell," Rodriguez said quietly, approaching her with none of his usual aggressive posturing, "I owe you an apology, and I owe you an explanation." Sarah stopped and turned to face her former tormentor, unsure of what to expect from this unexpected encounter. "I spent my entire career believing that the military was a certain kind of place for certain kinds of people," Rodriguez began. "When I looked at you, I saw everything that didn't fit my narrow definition of what a soldier should be. I was wrong, and my treatment of you was inexcusable." The drill sergeant's words carried a weight of genuine remorse that surprised Sarah. She had expected many possible outcomes from her successful mission, but an apology from Rodriguez had not been among them. "Your success on this mission has forced me to examine my own prejudices and limitations," Rodriguez continued. "You've demonstrated capabilities and character that I failed to recognize, and you've probably saved more lives in one night than I have in my entire career." Sarah listened to his words with a mixture of validation and compassion. While Rodriguez's treatment of her had been harsh and unfair, she could see that his acknowledgement of his mistakes represented genuine growth and self-reflection. "Drill Sergeant, I appreciate your apology," Sarah replied. "I hope that my experience can help other soldiers who might face similar challenges in the future." Rodriguez nodded solemnly. I've requested a transfer to a different position where I can focus on logistics and administration rather than training recruits. I don't trust myself to evaluate potential fairly anymore, and I don't want to hold back another soldier who might have the same potential you've demonstrated. The conversation concluded with a handshake that symbolized not just personal reconciliation, but also a broader recognition of changing attitudes within the military establishment. Sarah's success had challenged traditional assumptions and opened doors for future soldiers who might not fit conventional molds. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's story spread throughout the military community, becoming a powerful example of how determination, skill, and moral courage could overcome prejudice and institutional barriers. Her advancement to special operations training was expedited, and she quickly established herself as one of the program's most promising candidates. The Ghost call sign that had once been intended as mockery became a source of pride and identity for Sarah. She embraced the name as a reflection of her unique capabilities and her ability to achieve mission success through unconventional approaches. During her advanced training, Sarah's instructors recognized that her combination of technical skills, tactical thinking, and moral character made her ideally suited for intelligence and reconnaissance missions that required innovative solutions to complex challenges. She excelled in every phase of the program, earning the respect and admiration of fellow trainees and instructors alike. The hostage rescue mission that had launched her career became a case study in military schools, demonstrating the value of creative thinking, individual initiative, and the willingness to challenge conventional wisdom when circumstances demanded it. Sarah's approach to the crisis was analyzed and incorporated into training programs designed to prepare future operators for similar challenges. Years later, as Colonel Sarah Mitchell looked back on her journey from ridiculed recruit to distinguished military leader, she reflected on the lessons learned and the principles that had guided her success. Her story had become an inspiration to countless soldiers who faced their own challenges and obstacles in pursuit of military excellence. The transformation from Ghost, the insult, to Ghost, the legend represented more than just personal achievement. It symbolized the military's evolving recognition that excellence comes in many forms, and that the most valuable soldiers are often those who bring unique perspectives and capabilities to their service. Sarah's legacy extended beyond her individual accomplishments to include systemic changes in military training and evaluation procedures. Her experience had highlighted the importance of recognizing potential in all soldiers, regardless of their physical characteristics or conventional expectations. The warehouse mission had lasted only a few hours, but its impact on Sarah's life and career would continue for decades. She had proven that courage, competence, and dedication could overcome any obstacle, and that true military excellence was measured not by conformity to traditional standards, but by the ability to achieve mission success while upholding the highest principles of military service. As she continued her military career, Sarah carried with her the knowledge that she had earned her place among the military's finest through merit, determination, and an unwavering commitment to protecting those who could not protect themselves. The young woman who had once been mocked for her size and gender had become a symbol of what was possible when talent, training, and opportunity converged in service of a greater cause. The story of Ghost became a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize the true potential that exists in every individual willing to serve their country with honor and distinction. "Command, Ghost here," she whispered urgently. "I have visual on the 3 remaining targets. They're using hostages as cover, but they've exposed themselves to flanking positions. I can provide targeting information for non-lethal takedowns." "Ghost, you are not authorized for direct action," Blake responded immediately. "Maintain your position and continue providing intelligence only." But Sarah could see that the situation was deteriorating rapidly. One of the perpetrators was showing signs of panic and appeared to be considering violence against his hostages. She knew that waiting for a perfect solution might result in innocent people being harmed or killed. Making a decision that would define the rest of her military career, Sarah quietly moved from her concealed position toward a flanking angle that would allow her to intervene if necessary. She was violating direct orders, but she was also potentially saving lives. The perpetrator, who had been showing signs of panic suddenly, raised his weapon toward one of the hostages, apparently deciding that his situation was hopeless. Sarah reacted with lightning-fast reflexes, emerging from her concealment and using a non-lethal takedown technique to neutralize the threat before he could harm anyone. Her action created the opening that Blake's team needed to complete the rescue operation. Within seconds, all remaining perpetrators were in custody, and the hostages were being moved to safety. The mission had been completed successfully with no civilian casualties and minimal injuries to law enforcement personnel. "Ghost, this is command." Blake's voice came through her earpiece with a tone of mixed admiration and concern. "Outstanding work. But we need to discuss your decision to engage directly." Sarah knew that she would face consequences for violating her orders, but she also knew that her actions had likely prevented a tragedy. As she watched the hostages being reunited with their families outside the warehouse, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose that validated every challenge she had overcome during her military training. The debriefing that followed would reveal the full impact of her contributions to the mission, and the recognition she received would forever change how people viewed her capabilities and potential. The colonel's words hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. He had spent months trying to undermine Sarah's confidence and prove that she didn't belong in the military. Instead, she was being entrusted with a mission that could determine the fate of 12 innocent people. As the deployment time approached, Sarah felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. She was about to put her training and abilities to the ultimate test in a situation where failure could result in tragedy. But she also felt a deep sense of purpose and validation. She was finally being given the opportunity to prove that she belonged among the military's finest. The transport to the crisis site gave Sarah time to review her mission parameters and mentally prepare for what lay ahead. She would be entering a hostile environment with no backup and limited support, relying entirely on her training and instincts to complete an operation that experienced Special Forces operators had been unable to accomplish. As they approached the warehouse district, Sarah could see the scale of the law enforcement response that had been assembled. Police cars, SWAT vehicles, and military support units had established a perimeter around the target building, but they were being held back by the threat to civilian lives inside. The mission was about to begin, and Sarah's life would never be the same again. She continued to listen, gathering as much information as possible about the situation. The crisis involved hostages being held in a fortified location, and conventional military approaches had proven ineffective. The perpetrators were well-armed and had demonstrated a willingness to use violence against their captives. As Sarah absorbed this information, she began to formulate a plan. Her training, her natural abilities, and her current situation gave her a unique opportunity to contribute to a mission that could save lives. She knew that approaching her superiors through normal channels would likely result in her being dismissed or ignored, but she also knew that she possessed skills that could make a difference in this crisis. The conversation below continued, with the officers discussing various options and contingencies. Sarah learned that the hostage situation was taking place in an urban environment approximately 2 hours from the base, and that time was running out for a peaceful resolution. "We need to present options to command within the next 6 hours, one officer stated. "If we can't come up with a viable plan, they're going to authorize a full-scale assault, and that's going to result in civilian casualties." Sarah made a decision that would define the rest of her military career. She carefully made her way back through the ventilation system, exiting the facility as silently as she had entered. Her mind raced with plans and possibilities as she returned to the barracks, knowing that she had information that could be crucial to saving lives. Back in her bunk, Sarah lay awake for the remaining hours until dawn, weighing her options and considering the potential consequences of her actions. She could report what she had learned through official channels and hope that someone would take her seriously, or she could take more direct action to contribute to the mission. When morning came and the evaluation exercise began, Sarah approached Captain Anderson with a request for a private meeting. She knew that this conversation would either open doors for her career or end it completely, but She also knew that she couldn't ignore what she had learned about the hostage crisis. As she made her way through the course, Sarah noticed something that made her pause and take notice. In the distance, she could see lights moving through an area that was supposed to be off-limits to training exercises. The lights appeared to be coming from a facility that was marked as restricted on all training maps. Her curiosity was piqued, but she forced herself to focus on completing her assigned mission. She made mental notes about the location and timing of the mysterious lights, planning to investigate further when the opportunity presented itself. Whatever was happening at that facility, it was clearly something that wasn't part of the standard training program. Sarah completed her night navigation exercise in record time, hitting every checkpoint and returning to base before dawn. She submitted her report to Rodriguez without mentioning the strange lights she had observed, knowing that he would likely dismiss her concerns or use them as another excuse to criticize her performance. The mystery of the restricted facility continued to occupy Sarah's thoughts in the days that followed. She began paying closer attention to the movements of personnel around the base, looking for clues about what might be happening in the off-limits area. Her observations revealed patterns of activity that suggested something significant was taking place behind the scenes.